So before I begin my doctrinal talk, which is about 3 or 4 hours, I was told. No? That's what they told me. That's why they brought a lot of food in here. That's good till midnight.
No problem.
Right? Okay. So how long do I have, by the way?
2 hours.
2 hours? Okay. I'm going to have to cut it short by half then. I'd like to acknowledge some of our guests in here. If you haven't met him yet, Father Freddie Thomas. Father Freddie. And we have here Sister Benny Kaleli. Bina Kaleli. And of course, they won't be here without Lorraine. Lorraine is their means of transportation, right? Lorraine, good to have you here. Welcome. And welcome everybody who's here for the first time. Who's here for the first time, like me? Anybody else? All right. I've been for the first time here for so long, I think. And I think I gave this talk on No More Secrets when we were still at St. Mary's. Who remembers that? We were still at St. Mary's in Oakland. That was the last time I gave this talk. You know why? Because this is not a popular talk. Nobody wants to talk about this because the title is No More Secrets. Right?
So let's talk about it.
So let's talk about it, right? There's no more secrets. But before I start, I got 2 stories for you. Actually, one is a joke. Did you see the flyers I gave you? What do you see in there? Huh? The eye.
But is that you?
Yeah, and then did you see another picture in there? Huh? The eye. The eye is the only one that you can notice? The boy. That's it? Who? The deacon's there, right? So the reason why I'm sharing that with you is you have to bring that home. Right? And as Filipinos, sometimes we have so many rodents in our house. That's going to get rid of your rodents. Okay? That's number 1. Number 2 is, I'm going to share with you how I get involved with this ministry, and I'm going to share some more as I go through the slides in here. But before I do that, I want to introduce myself and jump the Corsillo way, right? Good evening, my dear brothers and sisters. I'm your brother, Dcn Albert Dizon. I lived my Corsillo in February, Valentine's weekend of 1993. Right? 1993. Corsillo number 47, the Kuya St. John. And here's the guy responsible for it. He's my rector for the weekend. So, people say, how did you get involved in No More Secrets? So, as a deacon, and Deacon Ray is here, he knows that, during our formation, we're asked, of course, you know, we have this liturgical ministry that we get involved with at church, right? The Mass and the sacraments and all those things. I don't have to explain to you what the deacon does. You should know all of this, right? Or do I? No, I hope you do it. Come on. Well, out of the 7 sacraments, of course, we can do baptism and the sacrament of matrimony, right? So the other sacraments, like the Eucharist, you see us there assisting with Father, right? We're just assisting, of course, because we cannot consecrate. We cannot hear confession because we cannot give absolution. Actual story about that is this, because we are married clergy as permanent deacons. I hope I don't run out of time with all this side story that I have. Okay. Because we're married, right? And priests are not, right? So what they're afraid is, if you confess your sins to me, first of all, I cannot give you absolution. And sometimes some of us, we talk in our sleep. Then our wives are going to hear what your sin is, right? Nah, that's just a joke. But, but the other one, so just out of the 7 sacraments, right? You know that. Well, so we have also are asked before we're ordained to pick a service ministry. And the late Father, no, I don't remember his name. This is what you call senior moments. He'll come back to me. But the director before said, if you're going to pick a service ministry, pick something that will challenge you. Something that will challenge you. He's not saying that not any of the service ministries will challenge you, but if you're used to like already serving the poor, going to soup kitchens and stuff like that, going to shelters, or let's say going to San Quentin and doing prison ministry and all those, you're used to that. And if you pick that as your service ministry, then it's just like, oh, it's no challenge. So I thought about that, and then lo and behold, when we were on our 3rd or 4th year of formation, so it takes us 5 years to form, because we're not that smart. We were asked to pick a service ministry, and so happened that it's about, so we first started our formation in '99, so then at around early 2000, this clergy sexual abuse start coming up, right? It became so big. And so the diocese was starting up this ministry for the clergy sexual abuse. They call them victims back then, but actually the right term is they're survivors. They are survivors. They were victimized, but now they're survivors. So they were starting this ministry called No More Secrets. And so they gave a little presentation. I was intrigued about it. And so I went in and joined the ministry. Now at the same time, if you remember Deacon Stanley,
Yes.
right? He used to minister at the port of Oakland, the apostleship of the sea, right? The seamen, the seafarers. Yeah, I used to call it seamen. That's a different term.
Seaman.
Yeah, seaman. But now they call it seafarers because they're also women that also are in the ship. So I got involved in that too, right? As part of it, and I go to the ship, pray with them, sometimes bring them communion. Then afterwards, is they ask to be brought down, so we bring them down. There's a trailer where they can get their phone cards and all that, so they can call the Philippines. Believe it or you know that, right? A big percentage of the seafarers are Filipinos, right? Back then when I was serving there, I would say probably almost about 60 to 70% are Filipino. And most of them are marine engineers, so they're all college graduate and everything. So the story is that when I'm done praying with them, and sometimes I bring a priest, we have a mass, I assist in all those things. So they go down and then they ask me, can we drive around the city? So the Apostolate of the Sea has a van, so we go out, and I can bring normally 6 people, it's 7-passenger van. So we go out, sometimes I bring them to St. Anthony in Oakland, where sometimes they have some used clothing and stuff like that, and they get it, right? So one of the most popular plays that they have is in, where Emeryville, where they have the shopping center. What's the name of the big? IKEA, right? Well, they don't go to IKEA. They go to the area in IKEA, all right? There is a place there that's very popular to the Filipinos, especially the men, and they go there. You want to guess what it is?
Dumpling?
Huh?
Red light district?
Red light? No, it's not red light. It's a clean place. It's called Victoria's Secret. Why they go there? Because Victoria's Secret, remember Victoria's Secret is not just an underwear place. They sell this perfume, the lotion, right? So who uses Victoria's Secret lotion or perfume?
The man.
Right? Okay. Well, I guess some men can do it too. Well, that's their favorite because what it is their wives, and maybe their girlfriends, but they ask them to bring those because when they go on sale, they're regularly $10 maybe, right? And sometimes they go on sale for $5, so they buy a lot of it. So sometimes my story is I got involved in this ministry of the No More Secrets, but I also then, on my other ministry, a service ministry with Apostleship of the Sea, I have the Victoria's Secret. That was the joke, but you didn't get it, huh? But it's true though, from No More Secrets to Victoria's Secret. So I've been there. So tonight we're going to talk about No More Secrets ministry. What is this ministry all about? I'm sure some of you might have heard this already. What I'm going to do before... I proceed. I'm going to try to cover with you the what, the why, the where, the who, and the how. That's always try to do with my presentations, right? And you know me well by now on why I do that. Why are we doing what we're doing? Well, first of all, actually, this is in response to Sister Gid's email to me. And that's why I tailored my presentation. She said, amidst the controversial and scandalous sexual abuses within the church, are there things being done to help victims, which are actually survivors, that were and are wounded not only physically and mentally, but wounded in their very core, their souls? What happens to the perpetrators that are still living? What about us? What can we do? So when Sister Gid sent this to me and said, okay, now I think I have some agenda on what I'm going to cover, so I'm going to try to stick to that as much as I can. Okay? If I'm not doing that, please raise your hand and say you're going, on the wayside. You're going the left field. Okay. Because sometimes that happens to me. I digress or go somewhere in the left field, far away. So, in order to know what No More Secrets is to, okay. First, let's define what is clergy sexual abuse. So as you can see there, clergy sexual abuse occurs when sexual activity of any kind is enacted by a priest or deacon, thereby abusing the power and authority of the pastoral role committed to the priest or deacon, and violating the rights and dignity of the persons affected by such misconduct. The fundamental dynamic at the heart of the clergy sexual abuse is that of an abuse of power. So this is the key word. That's what's happening. When there's clergy sexual abuse, it's about the abuse of power. So look at your handout with the nice picture there that you're going to bring home for your rodents. There's actually a question in there that talks about, so I'm just reviewing with you some of the fundamentals of this. On the middle it says, can clergy sexual activity ever be consensual on the part of the victim? You see that on the middle? Yeah. Can clergy sexual activity ever be consensual on the part of the victim? We know what that means, right? Yeah. That means they both agree they'll do it, therefore it's okay. Answer is never. The power differential in the relationship automatically puts the priest or the deacon in the position of the power. Therefore, there can never exist a true mutually consensual agreement. It is the obligation of the priest or clergy to hold the sexual boundaries in all relationships. So sometimes people will say, well, problem is, the way they dress up. They're so sexy. And it's too revealing and all those things, right? Well, of course, we're just men. We get tempted. Well, guess what? It's because of your ordination, your power. You should be able to understand or know how to define your boundaries, right? In the seminary, correct me, Father, if this is wrong, they're trained about boundaries. What are the boundaries? Yeah, I know we're all human. But when you say, some people would tell me, well, so-and-so was accused, and it's not a minor, therefore it's okay. Of course, you're talking about the father or a deacon or a clergy. But it's okay, but the person actually has consent with it, and they both had agreed to do it. Is that good? It's still called clergy sexual abuse. Because sometimes I hear that from people saying, well, actually, it was consensual, so therefore it's no big deal. It is a big deal, right? They're in authority, they're in power, the clergy are, therefore we should know what our boundaries are, no matter what. And that's why as clergy, that's why especially the priests, we just had the 24-hour for the Lord just a weekend ago, and Father Freddy helped us with the confessions in that in 24 hours. That's why our priests need a lot of prayers. That's why they need a lot of prayers. It's because of all these things that are around us. Okay, so moving on. Who may be victimized by clergy sexual abuse? Anyone may be potentially victimized by clergy sexual abuse. This includes not only minors, but young adults and adults, both male and female. Make sense? Is that a surprise? So we've just been hearing things about, oh, you know, this abuse that happened 30 years ago. This kid or this child was still, you know, at a younger age. Well, working with a lot of them since I got involved in this ministry, you'll be surprised with all the kind of things that they've been exposed with, right? Then, when they got older, in their young adults, they were abused again. So it's like sometimes they say to their, you know, their mind, do I have a sign in here that says abuse me? And that's the kind of thing that they have in their mind sometimes. So abuse doesn't just happen to young people, it happens to people of every age. So, knowing what abuse is, what clergy sexual abuse is, and who are the victims, what is the church doing about it? There's this Dallas Charter for the Protection of Children and Young People, and there's the USCCB, United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. This is the Charter for the Protection of Children and Young People. It is a comprehensive set of procedures originally established by the USCCB in June of 2002 for addressing allegations of sexual abuse of minors by Catholic clergy. So this was the start of it, back in 2002. It's when all this official addressing of his sexual abuse by clergy was brought up in public. Why brought up in public? It's because in the old days when we hear about these things, they will say, oh, that never happened. You know, how could Father so-and-so do that? And then they'll even blame the young kids. Oh, don't say that. You're going to be committing a sin when you're falsely accusing the father. Right? Do you ever hear that kind of story? And most of the time it just gets swept under the rug. Because nobody could believe it. Why would a clergy do such a thing to our young people? So in 2002, the USCCB came up with this charter for the protection of young children. The charter also includes guidelines for reconciliation, healing, accountability, and prevention of future acts of abuse. It was revised in 2005, 2011, and just last year, 2018. So you could see it's updated as the church becomes more aware of this crisis. I say, why more aware? Because, you know, a lot of people still, even now, that I talk to, they still didn't believe that it's happening. They still think that it's something that's made up by these young children who were altar servers before, who were abused. A lot of those that I'm dealing with, they're altar servers, either they're male or female, and they were sexually abused. And I'm not going to go into detail of how that is, but you know, when we have our meeting with them, the survivors of clergy sexual abuse, and that's part of the therapy, is they tell this story about this. There's one that's really bothering, is that sometimes they're told, if you want to go to heaven, you have to do this. Do you imagine that? So if you're a child, right, and you don't know anything at all, what are you going to do? And sometimes what happens too is even the parents themselves have an idea that it's happening, but then they take it as like, oh, well, the priest or the deacon or the clergy is serving the Lord. Therefore, they're the soldiers of the Lord. And if this is happening to my family, this is a sacrifice. Could you imagine that kind of thinking? So they're allowing it